Greetings. My name is Liam Grogan, and the title of my project is They Call Me Johnny Walker, an Iraqi interpreter's devotion to effective communication for the U.S. military during the Iraq War. The United States planned on making connections with the Iraqi population through a newly established democratic government during the Iraq War. The cultural and religious differences between America and Iraq acted as barriers to effective communications with the Iraq people. The United States succeeded in communicating with the Iraqis through the use of native Iraqi interpreters who had an understanding of Iraqi and American culture. With the aid of Iraqi interpreters, the U.S. military found the key to communicating the objective of restoring order to the country of Iraq by combating radical militant groups with astounding precision, coordination, and understanding of these terrorists' motives. Historically speaking, during wartime, the United States has been most effective in communicating with the local population through their government. The U.S. understandably thought they could communicate with the people of Iraq by means of a new government, one in which they would assist in standing up. Iraq's previous governments had all been deeply intertwined in Muslim culture and the religion of Islam. When the U.S. attempted to institute a Western-style democratic government, the people of Iraq felt no allegiance to a new administrative system which ruled with religion separate from leadership. Thus, the U.S. military had to find another way to convey their intention and purpose in Iraq. The U.S. found success in implementing the instrumental aid of Iraqi interpreters in effectively communicating with local populations. Skilled interpreters and seasoned interpreters were able to bridge the innumerable gaps, barriers, differences between American and Iraqi governing styles, politics, culture, religion, and of course, language. Johnny Walker is one such extraordinary Iraqi interpreter who worked tirelessly to bridge the divide in communication between Iraq and the U.S. In this opening scene, Johnny Walker is being given his naturalization interview by a U.S. Immigration and Citizen Services officer. You want me to explain how I can be an asset as an American citizen? Certainly, I can do that. I will share with you my time as an Iraqi interpreter for the U.S. military, as I see that is the most appropriate thing to do. By the time I had gotten my first job as an Iraqi interpreter for the American Armed Forces in the spring of 2004, Saddam Hussein had already been chased from power, and every city in Iraq had been captured and was completely under the control of the U.S. or another powerful ally in the coalition forces. I'd first gotten my job as an interpreter for the U.S. military police, commonly known as the MPs. We operated in the evenings and early mornings, making routine rounds in certain parts of my home city of Mosul. We were there to assist the Iraqi police in helping sustain general law and order in my city. In the early days, a criminal incident was rare. Nothing like today. The Mosul locals welcomed them and were accepting to see the change the U.S. military brought with them. Not all was perfect in Iraq, as we were still in a semi-civil war. Our economy and supply chain were in shambles. With Saddam's government destroyed, members of his political party, the Ba'ath, and most soldiers in the Fadhin Saddam, his private army, formed radical groups such as the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. These groups would later morph from freedom fighters into terrorists that used the Islamic religion as a guise to shield their political intentions and to provide excuses for their atrocious behavior towards Iraqis and non-Iraqis alike. I spent all around a total of 6 months working with the MPs, which provided me with the much-needed time and practice to get significantly better at my English. It also gave me insight and appreciation for the work the U.S. was doing to restore my country. The military police were extremely well organized and efficient in their jobs, nothing like the Iraqi police. One day, I was approached by my commander of my MP unit. He said I had an opportunity to be interviewed for a promotion. He said the job would pay nearly 3 times as much as my job did working for him. He warned, however, that this group went on regular missions every night to catch incredibly bad people. I agreed to take the interview, and that's when he told me I'd be working with the U.S. Navy SEALs. At the time, I didn't know who the SEALs were. It became very clear who they were as soon as I stepped foot in one of their tents for the interview. All of their equipment was top-notch, and they had this most professional feel about them. These weren't only soldiers, they were warriors. I was hired as an interpreter for the U.S. Navy SEALs, and for the first several months of my job with them, I was simply told the name of the person, and that was it. My job at first was to be quiet and translate when necessary. As the SEALs I was working with grew to trust me more, my job advanced too, as I progressed from a simple translator to the sole interrogator of all of our subjects on all of our missions. To fully understand what my job was and how I was constantly working to perfect it, one must understand how our missions were carried out. The SEALs always worked at night. Always. We would drive to the location and park a couple blocks out. We'd walk the rest of the way to the target's supposed abode, which was usually an apartment building or a house. A team would be sent in ahead of mine to secure the building and neutralize any threats. I would be brought in with my team and shown to the room where the suspect or suspects were being held. I would usually be given an ID, which was 9 times out of 10 fake and did not match the name of the jackpot, as we usually call the target or targets. My job was to get the truth from them. We were only using lies. We were only allowed to use empty lies and manipulated lies. I excelled at talking to others for the sake of getting information, so this was not an issue. I learned quickly what worked and what didn't. Different situations called for different tactics. Sometimes telling a suspect that you were going to take their family away was the only way to get them talking. In other cases, you could trick them into having a relaxed conversation with you where they would admit more about themselves than they ever could have thought. I recall one such mission which would highlight the importance and understanding between American culture and Arabic culture and what tactics to employ when. It was in the dead of night, as any other mission was. The target this time was a leader of a radical Shia militia operating in the city of Baghdad. We arrived at the house of the leader and where the leader was residing. The first team had the house secured in no time, and I was brought in. I met the suspect and his family. I spent several minutes walking around the house, looking at small artifacts and keepsakes, which hinted the fact that they were heavily religious. Shia, to be exact. I eventually sat down with the suspect and his wife in their Ghurfat al-Maisha, Arabic for living room. Since I was dealing with a potentially religious radical, I decided to play a game of false accusation to get them talking. It went something like this. I see you're obviously Sunni radicals. We know you're guilty, and I know this because we will find your equipment soon. You are making car bombs. Look, there's no point in lying to me. I am Jewish. If you don't start talking the truth now, you and me are going to be taking a trip to Guantanamo Bay. Understand? You don't. You say you're not Sunni? Seriously? You say you dress like Shia, and you would do anything to prove you are Shia and not Sunni. What is this? You are talking to me about fighting with the infidels and how I should be fighting with you in the name of Ali? Let me ask you something. You said you'd be willing to fight. I'm sorry. Do anything to prove that you are Shia and not Sunni. Does this include fighting with a radical Shia militia, killing innocent people on the street every day? At this point, it became clearly evident to both the jackpot and his wife that I knew exactly who he was. In Iraq, the authorities can simply say you're guilty and you will be punished. I knew the Americans didn't work that way, but I knew the terrorists didn't know. I know who you are. It doesn't matter whether you admit it or not. You are guilty, and I know that. You will be punished if you don't start admitting it now. The man confessed to setting up a whole operation with the Shia militant group we'd been tracking. Through this man, we found several massive caches of weapons and already assembled IEDs. Attacks in Baghdad were much calmer for nearly 2 weeks. Though that may not seem like much time, when there are innocent people dying on the streets at all times, every day of freedom from violence is a gift. These were the gifts I was proud to bring to my country. He was successful in communicating that he would be a valuable asset as an American citizen and was given his U.S. citizenship in due course. The Iraqi interpreters were the key to understanding the cultural and, dare say, religious differences between American culture and Arabic culture. The interpreters successfully communicated with both their people and the U.S. military in order to assist in the capture of key and high-ranking insurgents. Subsequently, the interpreters helped their people understand these radicals were using religion to manipulate their sympathies. By reducing the number of insurgents, the Iraqi government was able to get itself established and begin helping its own people.